I'm very excited about the future of Kubernetes. Kubernetes, if you see the journey so far, it was adopted by newer companies or developers, newer developers, because that excited them. But now Kubernetes has established the de facto orchestration platform for running containers, and bigger organizations, global 2000 organizations, have started looking for a transformation within their organization to adopt Kubernetes. So that the scope is large, and we haven't done with the journey of improving or simplifying Kubernetes. And that's what excites me well, is I usually use the car analogy to explain where we are with Kubernetes. So right now, it is as if we have exposed engine to the drivers and said, you configure the engine before you're driving. That's where Kubernetes is today. Where we have to go is the autonomous driving experience, where developers can come and say, deploy this application, and rest of it is taken care by the smart system to where the cluster should be provisioned, how big the cluster should be, how to configure an application, and how to run that application such that it satisfies the business requirements. So we have a lot of journey to cover, but there's a big market for Kubernetes, so it's both exciting and challenging at the same time. DKP is more suited for the organizations that are dealing with complex environment. Now, the complexity of the environment can be defined by whether it's an air-gap environment, which is fairly complex because Kubernetes by its nature is more online, which means it pulls in the necessary container images from the internet. So if it is a fully air-gap environment, that poses certain challenges, and DKP does very well in those complex environments. The second complex environment could be when organizations are dealing with a lot of edge clusters that have intermittent connectivity with the cloud or the main data center. DKP does very well with disconnected networks. The third would be when an organization is looking for multi-cloud strategy or hybrid strategy, where they have few clusters in different cloud providers. Some of those clusters might also be spending on-prem, and DKP provides a single management plane to bring standardization and consistency to that complexity. So coming back to where DKP suits well is when the challenge becomes high, the environment becomes more complex. DKP brings the necessary simplicity in managing those environments. D2iQ, we are developing a product called DKP Insights, which the vision with that product is that it would be able to predict if something goes wrong in the cluster before it actually happens. It proactively detects anomalies, security misconfigurations, critical vulnerabilities, and it would alert the operator before any of these things go wrong, because when something goes wrong, the business application goes down and it costs an organization till the point that business application is operational again. What we want to achieve with our DKP Insight product line is we could alert the operators even before something bad happens, so that the business have the continuity of the application and the revenue associated with that application. Adopting cloud native is not just a one-time function. It's a journey. It's a journey that starts from digital transformation of moving your legacy application to containerized application. Then it's a journey to understand how to provision your first Kubernetes cluster in production, what kind of toolings you would need, what kind of GitOps operations you would need, how would you educate your teams to start using Kubernetes. But then it starts from single cluster to multi-cluster. Then the complexity increases a notch higher with multi-cluster. How can you adopt the similar set of tooling that keeps the operational aspect of managing the fleets of cluster to minimum? How can you automate? How can you bring consistency? How can you standardize as you are taking hybrid and multi-cloud strategy? And finally, how you are adopting the right automation and right tooling such that you know how to troubleshoot when something goes wrong in your environment. So it's the cloud native strategy talks about how at each stage you can bring in changes in your people, processes, and product such that you could continue this journey till you reach to a point where everything is fully automated and the cost of running those operations are minimal, and your developers are spending more time in developing the business applications and not the managing the Kubernetes cluster. D2iQ mainly focus on global 2000 customers. Now these customers, before they adopt DKP as their Kubernetes platform, were facing challenges of skill gap. Their developers traditionally came from Java or Python background where they were running application on servers and not containerized. So now as they are moving towards containerizing their applications, they having to specify things like deployments or a pod or CPU and memory, which they have never specified before. So there was a skill gap in how to use Kubernetes. The second complexity they faced, or the second challenge they faced in adopting Kubernetes was how to operationalize, how to upgrade, how to bring necessary application, because CNCF has over 200 applications. Now it is very difficult for these organizations to figure out which of these projects are healthy, are supported by the community, would last longer, and how to manage these different projects in a way that it creates an integrated platform, which is what DKP has provided them, which is out of the box production ready Kubernetes cluster baked in with the necessary applications that they need to run such a cluster, so that the developers in those organizations can focus on the business application and not so much in operationalizing the Kubernetes cluster. DKP is unique in multiple aspects. The first one is it's built for keeping air gap first approach. Now air gap is essential to many organizations because there is a chance of pulling in compromised images and running on your cluster. So organizations that are like banks or public sector, they usually run Kubernetes in an air gap environment. At D2iQ, we have taken an approach that anything and everything that we ship is air gap compatible, which is it has no dependency on the external internet to provision a DKP cluster. The second uniqueness is the way we have automated and make it easy managing fleets of Kubernetes cluster. So typically what happens is when you take a multi-cloud strategy or a hybrid strategy, you develop different toolings, different teams that would handle one cloud versus another cloud, and which adds a lot of complexity and cost to an organization. With DKP Enterprise, it gives the standardization and consistency to the organization such that it doesn't matter any long where the Kubernetes cluster is being provisioned, because all the interaction with any of those environments remain the same, and it is through API, which it also allows, because it's an API driven right from the cluster provision to application deployment, it brings us the necessary standardization and consistency into the stack, and bringing down the operational cost that an organization has to put in managing the Kubernetes cluster. D2iQ is announcing 3 programs. One is around DKP Gov. So we are coming up with 2 new product lines called DKP Gov Essential and DKP Gov Advanced. DKP Gov Essential is basically a single cluster experience with more security focus on that, which includes things like FIPS 140-3, confirmed state side support, supply chain security, zero trust. So it's a more secure product line as compared to DKP Essential. Similarly, DKP Gov Advanced is for fleet management, multi-cluster management with more emphasis on security as compared to its counterpart, which is DKP Enterprise. The second announcement is DKP MSP program. So a lot of organizations are working on providing Kubernetes as a service. So they need flexible pricing such that they can offer to their client a chance of growing their cluster and shrinking their cluster if they are not used, and that requires flexi pricing. So D2iQ is announcing DKP MSP program today. And then the last but not the least is DKP 2.5, which is the newest version of DKP platform, which comes with enhanced fleet management capabilities and a DKP Insights, which is an application that will allow to predict the problems or issues happening in the clusters even before they happen. Over years, Kubernetes has become easier to install. That is, the day zero operation of Kubernetes has become very simple. But the day two operations continue to be challenging, which means industries and organizations are still facing challenges in terms of how should they be doing monitoring, how should they be doing logging, authentication, authorizations, policy management, cost management. The way D2iQ resolve or help organization through this complexity is by providing a DKP platform which is out of the box production ready. What that means is it comes out of the box with all the necessary applications, day two application we call it, that are necessary to run Kubernetes in production, which includes ingress controllers, storage, networking, policy management, cost management. And what we have done on top of that is we have made the complete stack API driven. This is something that made Kubernetes very popular and declarative. So with DKP, what you could do, or what our organizations can do, is they can not only install application declaratively, but also provision and upgrade their cluster declaratively, which gives them a lot of ease of operations and reduce the complexity that they often face when they try to do it by themselves. The biggest challenges in deploying and managing Kubernetes has been complexity, skill gap, and security.